Why did Harry release his statement at the exact moment global attention was shifting toward Prince William? That timing wasn't accidental, and it raised a question many people overlooked. While one side focused on headlines and public appearances, something entirely different was unfolding behind palace walls. Far from the cameras, William had been working on a long-term plan, one not built on emotion or reaction, but on structure, preparation, and the future of the monarchy itself. For years, King Charles has favored reconciliation, quiet conversations, and giving family members space to reconnect. It's a thoughtful approach rooted in tradition. But William has been watching the impact of repeated media waves and public narratives, and he's come to a different conclusion. If the institution is going to endure, it must evolve with clear boundaries and updated rules, and that's where this story shifts. Because what William has been building isn't a response to a single event. It's a blueprint that could redefine who holds royal roles in the years ahead. What happens when two future kings look at the same situation and see two completely different problems? That's the heart of the quiet divide, shaping everything behind the scenes. The contrast between King Charles and Prince William isn't about personal conflict. It's about two philosophies formed from two very different experiences. And understanding that contrast is the key to understanding why the monarchy is now entering one of its most strategic transitions in decades. For most of his life, Charles has believed deeply in the value of dialogue. He grew up in a world where family matters stayed inside private rooms, where disagreements were eased with conversation, and where unity was something worth protecting at all costs. His approach is rooted in patience, compassion, and an instinct to rebuild connections whenever they fracture. To him, the family's strength comes from its ability to repair itself. So when challenges surfaced, public interviews, shifting narratives, or moments where tensions spilled into global headlines, Charles leaned on the tools he trusted: discussions, understanding, and giving space for healing. His perspective has always been that relationships matter, and that time can mend even the most strained bonds. It's a thoughtful, steady philosophy shaped by decades of watching the monarchy navigate public opinion. But William? He sees something different. William has watched the same events unfold, but through the lens of someone who will one day inherit the entire institution. While Charles focuses on emotional repair, William focuses on structural protection. To him, the monarchy isn't just a family, it's a system, one that survives only when the boundaries around it are clear, consistent, and respected. He's witnessed how rapidly public narratives can shift. He's seen how quickly global conversations can challenge centuries-old protocols, and he's watched how repeated waves of media attention have affected the institution more than any single moment ever could. Where Charles sees opportunities for reconciliation, William sees warning signs that the structure itself needs reinforcement. The moment that changed everything, according to insiders, came during a private conversation between father and son. Not an argument, not a confrontation, just two men looking at the same landscape with very different instincts. Charles spoke about healing and unity. William spoke about clarity, responsibility, and the long-term survival of the monarchy. That was the moment their perspectives fully diverged. William realized that the institution couldn't rely solely on tradition anymore. It needed guidelines, not just inherited customs. It needed criteria, not assumptions. And most importantly, it needed a framework that separated personal relationships from official roles. Because in his view, the monarchy's strength isn't in how many people carry titles, but in how clearly those titles represent commitment and service. This is why William believes boundaries are essential, not as punishment, not as retaliation, but as modernization. In his eyes, the monarchy has lasted 1,000 years because it adapted before it was forced to. That's the thinking behind his deliberate and forward-looking approach. And as he watched public conversations unfold, across interviews, books, documentaries, and online discussions, he began seeing a larger pattern. Every unclear boundary became a pressure point, every undefined role became a vulnerability, and every assumption about royal status created confusion about who actually represented the institution. Charles responded with empathy. William responded with structure. Two approaches, both valid, both rooted in experience. But only one could guide the monarchy into its next chapter. And that's why William's next move wasn't emotional. It was strategic. It would take shape quietly, behind closed doors, through a long-term plan, years in the making. Because the real transformation didn't begin with a headline. It began with a decision William made long before anyone outside the palace realized a shift was coming. What if the most important decisions about the monarchy weren't happening in public at all, but in quiet rooms, long before anyone realized change was coming? That is exactly where Prince William's strategy began. While headlines focused on interviews, statements, and shifting narratives, William was investing his time somewhere else entirely, in building a team designed to modernize the monarchy itself. This wasn't a sudden reaction. It wasn't the result of one event or one disagreement. It was a plan years in the making, shaped by William's understanding that the world around the monarchy was changing faster than tradition alone could handle. He knew that if the institution didn't evolve with intention, it would be forced to evolve under pressure, and that's the one thing he wanted to avoid. So he began assembling a group of experts unlike anything most people imagined. Not PR advisors, not crisis managers, and not short-term consultants. Instead, he brought in individuals who understood the monarchy at its deepest level, its history, its precedents, its vulnerabilities, and its strengths. There were historians specializing in constitutional tradition, people who could trace every significant shift in royal structure over hundreds of years. There were strategists who studied how other monarchies adapted to modern society, what worked, what failed, and why. There were policy experts familiar with the fine print of royal protocol, details the public rarely hears about, but which define how titles, roles, and responsibilities truly operate. And the most important part? They worked quietly. No announcements, no leaks, no dramatic moves. Their goal wasn't to react to headlines. It was to future-proof an institution that has survived because it understood when to adjust its own framework. William didn't want quick fixes. He wanted clarity. Clarity about who represents the monarchy, how roles are defined, and how the system stays strong amid global attention. Within this team, the central question was simple but powerful. How do you create a structure that honors tradition while still functioning in the modern world? For decades, royal roles had been defined by custom and assumption that worked in another era. But William realized something crucial. In today's world, where information moves instantly and public perception shifts overnight, the monarchy needed rules that were clear, written, and consistent. So the team began mapping out everything. They studied every precedent around royal titles. They examined how past monarchs handled transitions. They analyzed how unclear boundaries had caused confusion in recent years. Their goal wasn't to target individuals. Far from it. Their goal was to build a blueprint that would protect the monarchy for the next 50, 100, even 200 years. And the more they researched, the clearer one principle became. Royal status must be tied to service, not simply association. This idea became the foundation of everything that followed. The monarchy couldn't function like an open-ended concept where titles drifted between public and private life. It needed definitions, it needed structure, and it needed a system that aligned titles with contribution, not proximity. That's the philosophy William embraced, not restricting the family, but protecting the institution. Not erasing tradition, but refining it so it remained meaningful. And the deeper his team went, the more they uncovered. Centuries-old tools and precedents already existed, waiting to be used. They didn't need to invent anything new. The system had always had the power to adapt. It had just never been activated to meet modern challenges. This realization would lead William to the most pivotal mechanism of all, a single tool capable of reshaping the royal framework with one signature. What if the most influential tool in the entire royal system wasn't a council, a vote, or even public opinion, but a single document that could rewrite the rules with one signature? That document exists, and it's far more powerful than most people realize. It's called letters patent, and it sits at the center of the quiet strategy Prince William has been shaping for years. Most people think of the monarchy as something governed by tradition, ceremony, and centuries-old customs. And while that's true on the surface, the real structure of royal titles and roles comes down to something surprisingly simple. The sovereign has the authority to define them, not by committee, not by negotiation, by issuing letters patent, a formal legal instrument used for centuries to clarify or update the royal framework. This tool isn't new. It's been used throughout history whenever a monarch needed to modernize the system. The most famous example came in 1917, when King George V realized the royal family had grown too wide, too confusing, with distant relatives carrying titles that no longer reflected their responsibilities. In one decisive move, he issued letters patent, limiting who held the titles of prince and princess overnight. The royal landscape shifted. No debates, no long processes, just clarity. That precedent matters because it shows something essential. The monarchy adapts when it needs to, and it has the built-in mechanism to do so quickly. William's team, after months of research, discovered that the modern challenges facing the monarchy were not so different from those of 1917. The world had changed. Public roles had blurred. Media attention had amplified every unclear boundary. And the difference between family member and working royal had become harder for the public to understand. So they looked back to the past to find the solution for the future. And what they found was simple. The monarchy didn't need a new system. It already had one. It just needed to activate it. That's when the idea solidified. A modern update to letters patent, designed for the 21st century. A document that would make one principle unmistakably clear. Royal titles belong to those actively serving the institution full-time, not to those pursuing independent projects, not to those stepping outside official duties, only to the individuals representing the crown in their daily work. This wasn't about exclusion. It wasn't about taking anything away. It was about accuracy, ensuring that titles reflect responsibility, not just connection. And while the public had no idea, something remarkable happened behind closed doors. A draft of this updated letters patent was completed, refined, reviewed, finalized, then stored securely, awaiting the moment a reigning monarch decided the time was right. That draft does something significant. It redefines official royal status in a way that is crystal clear, impossible to misinterpret, and aligned with how modern monarchies across Europe now operate. It draws boundaries that reflect service, not sentiment, and the most striking part: letters. Patent doesn't require public debate. It doesn't require Parliament to pass anything. It doesn't require a multi-stage process. It requires one thing: the monarch's signature. In an instant, the rules change, the titles shift, the framework resets. For those who rely on traditional or ceremonial associations, the impact is minimal. But for anyone whose public identity or professional positioning leans heavily on royal status, the shift could be profound. The system would evolve quietly, formally, and permanently, just as it has many times before. And while the existence of this draft has never been officially confirmed to the public, those familiar with the internal discussions say the groundwork is not theoretical, it is prepared, it is intentional, and it is ready when the moment arrives. But the real question is this: who would feel the impact most directly if this single document were activated? The answer lies in the next chapter of the story, where titles meet branding and identity meets reality. What happens when a public identity is built around a title that may one day shift? That's the delicate question sitting at the center of Meghan's current position. Because whether people support her, critique her, or simply observe from a distance, one fact is undeniable. Her public brand over the past few years has been closely tied to her royal connection. From speaking engagements to media projects, from introductions at events to collaborative partnerships, her title has always been part of how she is presented, not in a negative way, not in a controversial way, just in a factual, strategic sense. The title creates a unique angle, a point of distinction in an industry where countless personalities compete for attention. It's the detail that sets her apart. Her podcast emphasized the title, her production work referenced it, her public appearances often highlighted it, and it makes sense. In entertainment and media, identity is part of the value. A backstory matters, a unique position matters, and her status as a member of the royal family, even after stepping away from official duties, added dimension and curiosity to everything she did. But this is where William's planned update to the royal framework becomes significant. If updated letters patent eventually align titles exclusively with active service, then the way certain titles are recognized in official contexts may change. Nothing dramatic, nothing punitive. But structurally, the distinction between working royal and independent public figure would become far clearer, and that clarity would naturally ripple outward. It would shift how event hosts introduce her, it would shift how media outlets reference her, it would shift how brands calculate her public value. Not because she loses relevance, far from it. Meghan has built a substantial platform and continues to maintain strong influence across multiple industries, but the tone would change. The emphasis would move from current royal figure to public personality with a royal background. It's a subtle shift, but in business, subtle shifts can carry weight. This is why her team reportedly began exploring ways to secure her brand early, looking into long-term positioning, evaluating how to maintain identity regardless of how royal protocols evolve. But, as they soon realized, the monarchy already has long-standing systems to prevent commercial use of official titles. Those systems were in place long before Meghan arrived, and they exist to protect consistency across generations, which leads to the real tension. What happens to a brand built partly on royal identity when the institution moves toward clarity and streamlined roles? The answer becomes even more intriguing. In the next chapter, where William looks beyond Britain, studying how European monarchies successfully navigated transitions just like this one. What if the blueprint William is using didn't come from the UK at all, but from modern monarchies across Europe that already made the hard decisions Britain is only now facing? That realization became a turning point in his strategy. Because while the world was focused on interviews and reactions, William was quietly studying how contemporary royal families handled the same challenges: public expectations, changing roles, and the need for clarity in an era of global media. One example stood out above all others: Denmark. A few years ago, Queen Margrethe II implemented a major change by streamlining royal titles within her own family. It was a decisive move, rooted not in personal conflict, but in the belief that a monarchy stays strong when its official roles are clearly defined. The adjustment initially drew mixed reactions, but over time it brought sharper structure and a renewed sense of purpose to the institution. William paid close attention. He watched how the Danish public responded. He looked at how the monarchy communicated the decision. He noted how clarity ultimately strengthened the system rather than weakening it. From there, he expanded his research to Sweden, the Netherlands, and Spain, monarchies that adapted successfully without losing their heritage. Each one shared a similar philosophy. Modern relevance comes from transparency and structure, not from keeping every tradition unchanged. As William's advisors compared these models, a consistent lesson emerged. A monarchy thrives when its active representatives are clearly identified, and when titles match responsibilities, not assumptions. Armed with this understanding, William's team began preparing for every possible scenario. They examined decades of royal precedent, identified all existing protocols, and determined how each could apply to modern circumstances. They charted potential loopholes, explored how titles intersect with public identity, and ensured any future updates would be grounded in long-standing royal authority, not new rules. This level of preparation meant something important. Nothing would be reactive, nothing would be emotional. Every step would follow the system already in place. And that's why, when discussions about revised roles began circulating in public spaces, the palace didn't need to scramble. The groundwork had been laid years earlier. The structure was already built. All that remained was timing. But the most revealing part of this entire process wasn't the research, or the comparisons, or even the internal planning. It was what happened next, when William's long-term strategy quietly transformed the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace, signaling a major shift in how the monarchy intends to move forward. When you connect all the pieces, the contrast between Charles's gentle approach, William's structural vision, the years of preparation, the updated framework built around service, and the quiet drafting of a modern letters patent, you start to see the full picture. This wasn't a reaction to a single moment. It was a long-term strategy designed to clarify roles, strengthen the institution, and guide the monarchy into a future where responsibility and title finally move in perfect alignment. And now, with the groundwork complete, the question becomes, is William's approach a brilliant modernization or a decisive shift that will redefine royal identity for decades to come? I'd love to know what you think. If this breakdown gave you a clearer perspective, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Your support helps the channel grow and brings more in-depth analysis your way. We have much more to explore, and the next video will dive even deeper into how these strategic changes could reshape royal dynamics in the years ahead. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.